The rain had just begun to fall on the metal rooftops of District 12, a quiet metallic tapping that echoed through the narrow alleys where the humans lived under the shadow of the towering alien city. And for a moment the sound reminded him of home, of the soft drizzles in the far-off valley he had left behind. But here the rain tasted like iron, heavy with the scent of engines and warships drifting far above. Aaron pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders, not for warmth but for comfort, because nothing in this alien world ever felt like it belonged to him. Not the streets, not the lights, not even the air he breathed. And when he reached the bottom of the stairwell, he already knew she would be waiting, the landlord, the enforcer, the giant alien woman whose presence filled entire doorways like living thunder. She stood beneath the arch of the building's entrance, her tall frame wrapped in ceremonial armor that glowed faintly along the edges, her silver-blue skin marked with patterns of royal lineage, patterns that moved like living storms under the soft neon glow. Her eyes fixed on him with that same unreadable emotion she always carried, a mixture of duty, law, and something he could never name. "So you say you can't pay your rent?" She spoke, her voice deep, resonant, like stone shifting under pressure. But there was no anger in it, only a cold reminder that the law of her people never bent. Not for humans, not for soldiers, not for anyone born outside their stars. Aaron swallowed, trying to steady the faint tremor in his hands. A tremor he despised because it made him feel small in front of her, as if the universe kept reminding him that he did not belong. "I just need time," he said softly, his voice carrying the fatigue of 1,000 silent battles he never spoke about. "I'll pay everything, I promise." Her gaze lowered, not unkind but impossibly heavy, as if she could see every thought behind his words, every memory he tried to hide, every scar the war had carved into him. "Promises do not satisfy law," she warned. "Your stay is conditional on your obligations, and you have failed them." A soft breeze swept through the corridor, brushing past her long dark hair that shimmered like starlit obsidian, and for a moment he felt the strange sensation of wanting to explain everything to her. The lost job, the medical bills, the nightmares that kept him from working the night shifts, the truth about who he had been before he came here, the soldier he once was, the battle he never recovered from. But he said none of it because humans rarely spoke of their wounds in this alien world. "I'm trying," he whispered, and the words felt painfully small compared to her towering presence. Her expression shifted only slightly, but enough for him to notice, a tension in her jaw, a flicker of conflict in her eyes, as if her heart and her duty were no longer aligned. "Aaron," she said, and hearing his name from her felt strange, intimate, like a secret exchanged between enemies who didn't know how to stop caring. "The council will review your case at sunset. If they decide against you, you will be removed from the district under escort." He felt the world tilt beneath him, a cold sinking weight pulling at his ribs, because removal didn't just mean eviction, it meant deportation to the outer rings where humans worked under harsher skies with fewer rights, a place where survival depended on strength he wasn't sure he had anymore. The rain hit harder now, streaking across her armor, softening her sharp silhouette, and for the first time since he met her, she looked almost human in her uncertainty. "Why did you wait so long to tell me this?" he asked, though a part of him already suspected the truth. She breathed in slowly, her chest rising with a quiet heaviness. "Because I believed you would recover your footing," she answered, her voice unknowingly gentle. "Because I thought the strength I sensed in you would return." He blinked, stunned, not by her words but by the emotion beneath them. A fragile sincerity he never expected from someone bound by alien law. "Why would you care whether I stand or fall?" he asked, the question leaving his lips before he could stop it, carried by the ache of loneliness he had buried for too long. For a heartbeat she said nothing, and only the rain dared to speak between them, until finally she stepped closer, her towering form casting a protective shadow over him. "Because humans do not break easily," she murmured. "Because even without warships or crowns, you fight for survival with a spirit my people cannot understand." The closeness made his breath falter, and something inside him tightened, a mix of fear and connection he couldn't define, and he wondered if she could hear the faint thudding of his heart, if she recognized the unspoken bond forming between a giant alien princess bound by law and a human soldier hiding from the ghosts of his own destiny. Lightning flashed across the clouds above, illuminating her face for a single suspended moment, and he saw something unmistakable in her eyes. Fear, not of him, but for him, a fear that made the world feel heavier than before. "Aaron," she whispered, "the council fears what you are becoming, and if they choose battle over mercy, I may not be able to protect you." His pulse froze, not because of the threat, but because of the word she chose, protect. The rain fell harder, the warships growled across the sky, and for the first time since he arrived on this alien world, Aaron realized his fate was no longer his alone. It was tied to hers, bound by something deeper than law, something dangerous, something powerful. And somewhere deep in the city, a decision was already being made that would change both their destinies. Forever, night settled over District 12 like a curtain stitched from shadows and quiet sorrow, and the glow of the alien spires painted the streets in soft blues and silvers as Aaron walked away from the confrontation with a heaviness that clung to his chest like wet cloth, each step echoing with the unspoken fear that the council's judgment was already carved into stone. Yet his mind kept circling back to her voice, the way it had softened when she said his name, the way her eyes had trembled with a fear she tried to hide. He found himself wandering without direction, letting the city pull him along its metallic arteries, past vendors closing their stalls, past children watching the sky for passing warships, past other humans who carried the same quiet resignation he had carried since arriving here. And though he tried to calm his thoughts, her words kept replaying inside him, "The council fears what you are becoming." He didn't understand it, but the warning lingered like smoke trapped in his lungs, and the deeper he walked into the neon glow of the district, the more he wondered what she had seen in him that even he did not know, because she looked at him not as a tenant or a foreigner, but as something the council considered dangerous, and that thought rattled something buried deep in his memory. A soft hum resonated above as a patrol drone passed overhead, its metallic wings glinting, and Aaron instinctively pulled his hood lower, not because he was doing anything wrong, but because old habits from the war never really died. Soldiers learned to move without drawing attention, even long after the guns were gone. The smell of rain drifted over the marketplace, mingling with the warm scent of alien spices and the familiar aroma of human-made bread from the little bakery run by an old couple who refused to leave the district, and for a moment he paused, closing his eyes as memories whispered through him. His mother kneading dough with tired hands, the warmth of home he had not felt in years, a home shattered by a battle he didn't dare recall. His chest tightened, and he forced himself to breathe through it, but the memories pressed harder. The screech of enemy shells, the blinding light, the moment when everything he knew was taken in a single roaring heartbeat. And though the war ended, the guilt remained, coiled deep in his soul like a sleeping beast. He rubbed a hand over his face, the tremor returning, and for a moment the world blurred, until a soft voice pulled him back. "Aaron?" He turned, surprised to see a young human boy staring up at him with wide, hopeful eyes. "My sister said you might help us fix the heater again," the boy murmured, clutching a broken panel to his chest. "It stopped working and she's scared the council will punish us." Aaron swallowed the lump in his throat, forcing a faint smile, because helping others was the only thing still grounding him to something real. "I'll come by tomorrow," he promised gently. "Tell her not to worry." The boy's face brightened with relief, and he ran off, leaving Aaron standing in the dim light with a warmth spreading through him, fragile but real, because even if the council believed he was becoming something dangerous, the people around him only saw someone who tried to survive with kindness and tact. As he walked back toward his building, the sky rumbled softly, warships shifting their formations above the clouds, their lights flickering like restless stars, and he couldn't help wondering whether those ships were connected to the fear in her voice, whether the council had already prepared their response for him, whether their decision had already sealed his fate before the sunset even arrived. He reached the courtyard of the complex, its polished stone glistening with rain, and the moment he stepped through the archway he felt her presence before he saw her, like a warm pressure in the air, powerful yet strangely comforting. And when she emerged from the shadows, her armor darker now, her hair wet from the storm, he stopped breathing for a heartbeat. She looked at him with something raw in her expression, something she no longer tried to hide, a mixture of fear, regret, and an emotion he couldn't name. "Aaron?" she whispered, stepping closer. "I shouldn't be here." The council forbids personal contact once a case is under review, but I had to warn you. His pulse quickened. Warn me about what? Her throat tightened as she searched his face. There was a motion in the council chambers, a demand that you be removed tonight instead of at sunset. They claim a pattern in your behavior, strength returning too rapidly, instincts resurfacing too clearly, and some fear you carry soldier training not registered in the records. He froze, icy dread crawling through his veins, because he had tried so hard to hide what he once was, the soldier he had been, the skills that still lived in the marrow of his bones, the reflexes he could not erase. How much do they know? He asked, breath uneven. Her hands curled slightly at her sides, as if holding back the urge to reach for him. Enough to be afraid, she murmured, her voice trembling. They believe you could resist removal, that you might fight back, and they want to preempt it by force. Aaron, they're sending a retrieval squad. Lightning cracked across the sky, and the warships seemed to pulse with awareness, as if waiting for a single wrong move. Aaron felt the familiar burn of panic rising, the old soldier instinct roaring awake, but before it could consume him, she stepped closer, her aura powerful yet pleading. Listen to me. I can delay them, not stop them, but delay them long enough for you to prepare. You must not let them see fear, because the moment they sense weakness, they will escalate. He stared at her, emotion tightening his chest. Why are you doing this? Her breath hitched, rain sliding down her cheeks like silent tears she refused to acknowledge. Because I do not want your story to end like this, she whispered. Because destiny should not be decided by those who fear what they do not understand. The world seemed to spin around them, thunder rumbling like distant drums of war. And in that moment Aaron felt something shift inside him. A spark long buried beneath grief and survival. Something rising to the surface because she believed he still had strength worth fighting for. What should I do? He asked, voice low, steadier than he felt. Her eyes softened, glowing faintly with a desperate hope. You must remember who you were before fear dimmed your flame, she murmured. Because tonight, they will not be facing a tenant, they will be facing fate itself. And as the storm deepened, Aaron felt destiny narrowing its gaze upon him, binding his path to hers with invisible threads neither of them could break. While somewhere beyond the clouds, the retrieval squad prepared to descend, their orders already sealed, their judgment already made. But something new stirred within him, ancient and unbroken, a reminder that humans did not survive because they were strong, but because they refused to surrender even when the universe tried to crush them. And tonight, surrender was no longer an option. The storm deepened until the entire district felt wrapped in a trembling veil of shadow and trembling light. The kind of night where every sound echoed louder than it should, where every heartbeat seemed exposed to the open sky. And as Aaron stood beneath the archway, watching her struggle with a fear she did not want to show, he realized the world around them was changing faster than either of them could breathe. She stepped closer, rain cascading down her armor like liquid starlight, and the glow etched into her ceremonial plates flickered with a restless pulse, almost as if her body was responding to something deeper, older, something that whispered warnings only her kind could hear. And Aaron felt an unease settle in his spine, because it was clear she wasn't telling him everything. Not yet, not fully. A cold wind swept through the courtyard, twisting between them, carrying faint distant vibrations from warships shifting in formation above the clouds, and Aaron felt the air thicken, heavy with tension and unspoken truth. You said the council fears what I am becoming, he murmured, his voice low, drawing her attention with a gravity he didn't intend. Tell me why. Tell me what you see. For a moment she did not answer, her gaze drifting upward as if watching memories only she could feel. And when she finally looked at him again, something ancient stirred behind her eyes, a depth he had never noticed before, a depth that frightened him more than the retrieval squad ever could. Humans are unpredictable, she whispered, her voice trembling. Your kind heals faster than recorded, adapts faster, breaks rules of logic and biology our scholars cannot explain. And when humans rise from despair, something awakens in them, something that history has tried to hide. He swallowed, the tremor in his hands returning, because something in her words touched a memory he didn't want to face. Moment from the war he had buried beneath layers of silence, a moment when he had survived something impossible, a moment even his commanders had refused to acknowledge. "What did the council see?" he asked, stepping closer, feeling the storm pushing them together as if the night itself demanded the truth. Her breath caught, the faint luminescent markings across her cheeks glowing brighter, revealing her pulse fluttering beneath her skin. "When the investigators reviewed the surveillance, they found something impossible," she said softly. "During your collapse 3 nights ago, when you thought no one could see, your heart stopped for 7 seconds, and then it restarted on its own, stronger than before. Humans should not do that, not without assistance, not without reason." His chest tightened, a cold weight settling in his lungs, because he remembered that night all too well, the room spinning, the crushing pressure in his ribs, the moment he fell to his knees gasping for air that refused to enter, and then that strange warmth flooding through him like fire weaving itself into flesh, a warmth he had dismissed as panic. But she was telling him it was something more, something the council feared, something he had become a threat for simply surviving. "They think I'm some kind of weapon," he murmured, voice trembling with disbelief. She looked away at the ground, her ritual braids slipping over her shoulder like strands of midnight. "They believe a human who refuses to die is a human capable of resisting authority, capable of sparking rebellion, capable of awakening instinct that should have been dormant." Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating her face with sharp, celestial shadows, and Aaron saw something else there, something deeper than duty, a personal fear that had nothing to do with the council. "You're not telling me everything," he whispered, stepping closer. "There's more, isn't there?" Her jaw tightened, and she closed her eyes for a moment, her chest rising with a heavy breath she didn't release immediately. "My lineage is not ordinary," she murmured. "I was born under the royal code of the Starlit House, daughter of the war-crowned matriarch, and my duty is not just to collect rent or enforce law. My duty is to assess threats to our empire before they fully awaken." The words struck him like a cold blade, chilling him even as heat stirred in his chest, because suddenly her presence made a terrible kind of sense. Her attention to him, her fear, her hesitation, her constant watching. "You were sent to watch me," he said, but the words came out softer than he expected, wounded rather than angry. She flinched, her eyes softening instantly. "At first, yes," she whispered. "But it changed, Aaron. Everything changed when I saw you trying to rebuild your life with hands that shook, with eyes that carried storms, with a heart that still reached for others. Humans do not rise the way you do unless fate has a plan for them, and fate terrifies the council." He felt something inside him crack, not from betrayal but from the overwhelming weight of her confession. Because it wasn't just surveillance anymore. It was something emotional, something fragile, something forbidden by her own culture. "And you?" he asked softly, stepping closer until her breath brushed his skin. "Do I terrify you too?" Her eyes widened, luminous and raw, her voice barely audible in the rain. "You confuse me?" she whispered. "You break rules without breaking anything. You suffer without letting bitterness touch your spirit. And when I look at you, I feel something shifting inside me, something ancient, something my people call the echo. A bond only formed when destiny chooses 2 souls who are not meant to walk alone." His breath caught, not because he fully understood, but because she was trembling, and this towering alien princess, powerful and disciplined, was trembling because of him, before he could speak. A deep trembling vibration rolled through the ground, shaking the courtyard, echoing through the metallic bones of the building, and her head snapped upward, eyes narrowing with dread. "They're here," she whispered, her markings flaring bright with alarm. "The retrieval squad has descended." Aaron felt the air around them tighten like a tightening fist, the storm folding inward, the warships aligning above like watchful gods. And for the first time he truly understood that whatever destiny waited for him was not small, not quiet, not gentle. She reached for him then, her hand hovering inches from his arm, forbidden yet desperate. "Whatever happens next," she murmured, voice breaking, "do not let them erase who you are becoming. You are more than they fear, more than they can measure, more than fate has dared to reveal." The ground shook again, louder, closer. Aaron looked into her eyes and felt a force awaken in his chest, burning, rising, ancient and human and unbroken. The retrieval squad had come for him, but something far greater had already awakened, and it was no longer willing to remain silent. The shockwave rolled across the courtyard like a low roar from some colossal beast waking beneath the metal foundations of the district, and every light around them flickered as though the city itself blinked in fear. Aaron felt the vibration crawl up his legs and settle in his ribs, pressing against his heartbeat until it matched the rhythm of the descending engines above. Engines he recognized not by sight but by memory, because the sound was identical to the troop carriers that once circled the battlefields of his past. She stood rigid beside him, her tall frame tense and alert, her markings glowing in sharp patterns of warning that pulsed like living lightning across her skin. But beneath her warrior stance he sensed something else, something far more fragile, the trembling of a woman standing between law and emotion with no path that didn't betray one of them. The courtyard darkened as a massive silhouette lowered through the storm, a carrier dark as obsidian with wings that folded inward like the blades of a descending predator. The retrieval squad, armored enforcers trained to subdue threats without hesitation, and as the carrier's engines whined, Aaron felt a rising heat unfurl in his chest. The same heat from the night his heart had restarted, warm and alive and terrifying. Her hand brushed the air near his arm again, stopping just short of touching him, forbidden contact fighting with instinct. "You must listen carefully," she whispered, her voice trembling like a cracked star. "They will not speak. They will not negotiate. They will restrain, bind, and remove, and if you resist, they will escalate." He swallowed hard, the heat pulsing against his ribs. "And what do you want me to do?" Her breath faltered, her composure slipping for a single fleeting heartbeat. "I want you to survive," she murmured, "even if survival requires choosing a path I cannot follow." Before he could respond, a beam of harsh blue light swept across the courtyard, scanning the area with icy precision until it locked onto Aaron's form, and the carrier released a metallic hiss, the sound of hatches opening, the sound of inevitability. 5 enforcers leapt down with synchronized grace, towering like armored statues brought to life, their armor reflecting symbols of authority and judgment, their helmets glowing with a cold, unfeeling blue, and without a word they began to close in, forming a tightening circle around him. Aaron felt the storm inside him flicker with panic, but the alien princess stepped forward, her voice rising with command. "You will not touch him until the council's decision is formalized." The enforcers paused, but only for a breath. Then the one at the front lifted a tablet, projecting a hologram of the council crest, the royal emblem burning bright. The decree was clear: immediate retrieval, no delay permitted, threat level escalating. Her breath shattered at the sight, and Aaron saw the truth in her eyes. The council did not fear what he might become. They feared what he already was. The lead enforcer stepped forward, and the moment they reached for his arm, the heat inside him surged, sharp and blinding, racing through his body like wildfire woven from memory and instinct, and before he understood how, Aaron stepped back with emotion too swift to be human. His reflexes bursting awake like a forgotten storm, the enforcers reacted instantly, raising their batons that crackled with suppressive energy. Weapons designed to subdue enhanced beings, not ordinary humans. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice cracking with desperation. But the order meant nothing to the retrieval squad. Not when a threat had awakened. Aaron felt the heat rise to his throat, the world sharpening, slowing, narrowing into perfect crystal clarity. And for a heartbeat he didn't feel human. He felt something ancient, something forged in fire and loss and survival. The enforcer lunged, but Aaron was already moving, dodging with fluid precision born not of training but of instinct, and the squad froze in shock, recalibrating, reclassifying, escalating. He could feel it, the shift in their posture, the subtle tightening of their grips, the readiness to strike, and yet beneath the rising storm of fear, something else crackled within him. A memory he had never looked at directly, the war, the explosion, the moment he shouldn't have survived, the moment he had risen from the dust without explanation. Something had started back then, something that refused to die. And then the twist came, sharp and sudden. From her, she stepped between Aaron and the squad, her voice erupting in a command that shook the courtyard like thunder. "Stand down by royal decree." The squad froze, disbelief rippling through their formation as they looked at her with confusion. then shock, then recognition. And in that single suspended breath, Aaron understood. She was not just a princess, she was the heir, the chosen successor to the war-crowned matriarch, the one person in the entire empire whose voice could override a council order. But she shouldn't have. The law forbade intervention in cases of classified threat, and using her title here meant only one thing: she had just committed treason for him. The retrieval squad hesitated, recalibrating, because a royal command could not be ignored. Yet the council decree could not be disobeyed, and the conflict between those two forces flickered across their armor like static trapped in metal. The captain of the squad finally stepped forward and spoke, his voice distorted through the helmet. "Princess, if you assume full responsibility for the threat classification, protocol demands immediate transfer of risk to the royal bloodline." She stiffened, her jaw tightening, and though Aaron didn't fully understand the weight of the words, he could feel the dread rolling off her in waves. "What does that mean?" he whispered, sensing the answer was far worse than anything he imagined. She turned to him then, her eyes burning with a mixture of fear and something too deep to name. "It means," she murmured, voice trembling, "if they cannot take you, they take me instead." Aaron felt the world collapse inward, breath stolen by the weight of her sacrifice. The squad stepped forward again, this time not toward him but toward her, as protocol demanded, and he realized in a rush of terror that she hadn't just delayed them, she had replaced him. She had offered herself as the one to be taken. "No," he whispered, panic shredding through his chest. "No, you can't do that." But she did not step back, did not flinch, did not waver. "For you," she whispered, "I already have." And as the squad reached for her wrists, Aaron felt the heat inside him explode into something vast, ancient, unstoppable. The twist had rewritten the night, but his next decision would rewrite destiny itself. The moment their armored hands closed around her wrists, the courtyard changed, the air thickening with a pressure so immense it felt as if the storm clouds themselves were being pulled downward, crushed by the weight of what her sacrifice meant. And Aaron stood frozen for a heartbeat, unable to understand how the world had shifted in a single breath, unable to accept that she had stepped willingly into chains meant for him. The retrieval squad activated their restraints, shimmering bands of energy that locked her arms behind her back, dimming the glow of her royal markings. Symbols that had burned bright moments ago now flickering like dying stars. And the moment those symbols dimmed, Aaron felt something tear inside him, something ancient and furious. "Release her," he hissed, the heat inside his chest rising so fast it felt like fire climbing his throat. But the squad did not respond, not even to look at him, because protocol demanded absolute focus once a royal heir was taken into custody, and the lead enforcer spoke only to her, his tone detached, distant, almost reverent. "By your acceptance of responsibility, Princess, your fate is now bound to the accused threat. Should he escalate further, the consequence will fall upon you." A ripple of fear passed through her eyes, but she held herself tall, her chin lifting in a slow, defiant motion. "I understand," she murmured, though her voice trembled at the edges. Aaron watched in disbelief as they began to move her toward the carrier, her steps heavy, her breath uneven, and every inch the squad pulled her away felt like a thread being ripped from him, thread after thread until only a hollow ache remained. "No," Aaron whispered, louder this time, stepping forward as rain slid down his face like cold shards of glass. "You don't get to take her." But the squad closed ranks, shields forming a barrier of shimmering blue that hummed with lethal energy, and behind that barrier she stared at him with a pain that cut deeper than any blade. A silent admission that she hadn't wanted this but had chosen it anyway. As the carrier's ramp began to rise, Aaron felt something shift in the storm above, a low tremble that resonated with the fire inside his ribs. And suddenly the night sky lit up with thousands of tiny flickers, not stars, not lightning, but the blinking navigational lights of warships moving into position. He recognized the formation instantly. He had seen it once during the war, the day the alien empire declared a full-scale alert, the day the sky turned into a living battlefield. "They're not here for me," Aaron whispered, horror sinking into his bones. "They're here for her." She closed her eyes, her shoulders trembling as she whispered a truth meant only for him. A truth that slipped past the noise of engines and storm. If a royal heir is taken as consequence, the Empire prepares for Succession Crisis Protocol. Succession Crisis, a galactic code that activated only when a royal heir was compromised, a protocol that brought war fleets into orbit, defensive measures into the cities, lockdowns across star systems, everything shifting into a posture of emergency. This wasn't just danger. This wasn't just retrieval. This was the first step toward a galactic upheaval. The carrier lights brightened, counting down to departure, and Aaron felt his pulse spike, the heat inside him flooding outward until his vision blurred at the edges, the courtyard bending slightly as energy crackled beneath his skin. The enforcer nearest him noticed, recalibrating instantly, threat anomaly rising. The helmet announced, human subject entering elevated phase. Elevated phase. The phrase rang like an ancient echo through Aaron's memory, a term he had heard whispered during the war. Rumors about humans who didn't die when they should have, humans who rose stronger from mortal injuries, humans the enemy feared because they defied logic. She had hinted at it. The council had warned about it. The surveillance had captured it. But now it was happening in real time. His heart thundered, sending waves of heat through his limbs, his vision sharpening until he could see the microfractures in the squad's armor, the fine glow of their shield emitters, the faint shimmer of panic in her eyes even though she tried to hide it. "Aaron," she whispered urgently, shaking her head, her voice pleading even through her restraint. "Do not resist. If you attack them, the entire fleet above will open fire, not just on you, but on the district." He staggered, the words striking him harder than the storm, because she wasn't warning him for herself. She was warning him to spare the humans living in the surrounding buildings, the elders, the children, the workers, the families who never asked to be caught in this destiny's crossfire. He looked at her, breath ragged, energy pulsing violently inside him. "I can't lose you." Her eyes softened with a grief so deep it felt older than the galaxy itself. "You won't?" she whispered. "But if you fight now, everything ends." The carrier engines flared brighter, and the ship began to rise, lifting her inch by inch off the ground, her feet leaving the courtyard stones, her hair drifting in the wind like dark ribbons of starlight. "Princess," one enforcer announced, "prepare for containment transport." But before the carrier could ascend fully, the sky above split open with a booming wave of energy as a second fleet descended, their hulls marked with the golden crest of the royal house, her mother's fleet, the matriarch's warships, the most feared armada in the known systems. The retrieval squad froze, their armor flickering with urgent alerts. She gasped, her eyes widening in horror. Aaron felt the world jolt beneath him as destiny fractured. The matriarch herself was coming, and her arrival meant only one thing. The Empire believed a royal heir was under threat, and they were ready for war. Above the storm, the sky screamed with power as the largest warship emerged like a burning sun. Its cannons shifting, its shields glowing, its presence bending the air itself. Aaron looked up at the monstrous vessel. She looked down at him with tears fighting through her composure. And somewhere in the storm, fate whispered that the galaxy had already changed forever. Because of him, because of her, because some destinies were written not in law but in the fire between two souls who were never meant to meet yet could not walk apart. And the next moment would decide whether the galaxy burned or survived. The thunder of the matriarch's warship shook the sky until the clouds split like wounded fabric, spilling harsh golden light across the district, and the retrieval squad stiffened as the colossal vessel hovered above them, casting a shadow so vast it seemed to swallow the entire courtyard. Yet even beneath that oppressive weight, Aaron could only see her, lifted toward the carrier's interior with her wrists bound, her hair caught in the storm winds like unread pages of a story fate refused to hide. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for him, and that truth alone nearly broke him. The carrier halted midair as a beam from the matriarch's flagship locked onto it, forcing it into stasis, freezing the engines, trapping the squad between obedience and annihilation. And the enforcers exchanged tense glances as protocols collided violently inside their helmets. One of them finally spoke. We are under direct target lock from the sovereign flagship. His voice strained with something dangerously close to fear. Awaiting instructions, but instructions did not come. Only the heavy silence of authority weighing on every breath. Because the matriarch did not speak through channels when her child was involved. She descended personally. A force no empire dared defy. Aaron felt the ground vibrate as a narrow golden pillar of energy dropped from the flagship to the courtyard, swirling into a spiraling vortex until the air cracked open and she appeared, stepping out of the light like a storm given form, the war-crowned matriarch of the starlit house, taller than even her daughter, adorned in armor etched with constellations older than the empire itself. Her presence a suffocating blend of beauty, power, and judgment. Her gaze swept the courtyard with deadly calm, and when her eyes found Aaron, they narrowed, not with hatred, but with recognition, as if she had seen a ghost from an ancient story reawakened. Release her, the matriarch commanded, her voice low, smooth, and heavy with the authority to end worlds. The retrieval squad obeyed instantly, lowering her daughter to the ground, the restraints dissolving into harmless sparks as the princess stumbled forward, regaining her balance, her breath shaking as she met her mother's gaze. "Mother, please," she whispered. "I chose this, I accepted responsibility. And that," the matriarch replied coldly, "is why I arrived." The air crackled as she stepped closer to the princess, lifting her chin gently with a gauntlet hand, the gesture unexpectedly tender beneath the steel of her authority. "You inherited my strength," she murmured, "but not my caution." The princess trembled, not from fear but from the weight of consequences she never intended Aaron to bear. "He is not a threat," she pleaded. "He is human. He is struggling. He is a phenomenon." The matriarch cut sharply, turning her gaze toward Aaron again, her eyes glimmering with an emotion he could not decipher. "One the council should have reported sooner." Aaron stepped back instinctively, the heat inside his chest flickering dangerously. "I never asked for this," he whispered, his voice thick. "I never wanted any of this." The matriarch's gaze softened in a way that frightened him more than her anger would have. "No one ever wants what fate grows inside them," she said. "And yet the galaxy trembles whenever it awakens." Her daughter stepped between them, shielding Aaron with her body, her voice raw. "You will not harm him." The matriarch raised a brow, not insulted, not amused, but quietly wounded. "My daughter," she murmured. "Had I wished to harm him, this district would already be ash." Lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the three of them in a single suspended moment that felt carved from destiny itself. And for the first time, Aaron saw them not as enforcer and heir, but as mother and daughter bound by a love as fierce as the storms above. A love now entangled with him, unwanted yet undeniable. The matriarch stepped closer, the air folding around her like a living mantle of power. "Human," she said softly. "What burns inside you is not mutation, not accident, not defiance." Aaron swallowed, throat tight. "Then what is it?" "A memory," she whispered. "An inheritance older than your species' recorded history." A chill ran through him, sinking into bone. "I don't understand." "Of course you don't," she murmured. "Humans were never meant to remember what they once were." The princess turned sharply toward her mother, shock flashing through her luminous eyes. "You knew." "I suspected," the matriarch said. "Long before he arrived in this district, long before his heart revived itself, long before fate tied itself to yours." Thunder boomed overhead, the warships shifting like restless titans awaiting a leader's word. "What am I?" Aaron whispered, voice trembling as the heat in his chest surged brighter, hotter, more alive. The matriarch's gaze held neither cruelty nor fear but a strange reverence. "You are the spark," she murmured. "The one our ancestors warned of, the one who rises when the balance of power fractures, the one who carries the forgotten strength of the first humans, the ones my kind could never conquer." The princess drew in a sharp breath, stepping closer to him as if to shield him from the truth itself. "So the council feared him because they knew." "No," the matriarch corrected. The council feared him because they only saw the potential for destruction. She reached out, her armored hand hovering near his chest without touching. The heat inside him vibrating toward her as though responding to her presence. "But she whispered, "see destiny." Aaron's breath stuttered, his knees threatening to buckle under the weight of her words. Because destiny was not a blessing. It was a burden. A chain woven from choices he had not yet made. The princess turned to him, eyes shimmering with something raw. "You are not alone," she whispered. "Not anymore." But the matriarch's gaze darkened. "If he rises without guidance, the galaxy will fracture. And if he doesn't rise," the princess countered, "the galaxy will fall into tyranny." A silence followed, shaped like an unspoken truth neither of them wanted to accept. Then the matriarch stepped back, her decision rippling through the sky like an unseen shockwave. "The fleet will stand down," she declared. "But the human comes with us." Aaron stiffened, heart hammering so violently he feared it might burn through his ribs. "With you? For training," the matriarch said. "For control. For survival." The princess added softly, "Yours and everyone else's." The storm swirled around them, lightning catching in her daughter's eyes, fire catching in Aaron's heart, and destiny settling over the courtyard like a mantle no one could refuse. The climax approached like the slow drawing of a cosmic bowstring, and the next breath, the next choice, would decide whether the galaxy found balance or broke under the weight of the spark that had awakened inside a human who never asked to be extraordinary. The storm above them quieted, not because the danger had passed, but because the sky itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a decision that would ripple across star systems like a tide of fate. And Aaron stood at the center of it all with the princess on one side and the matriarch on the other. Two forces of destiny pulling at him with equal gravity. One bound to him by choice, the other by prophecy older than memory. The courtyard trembled as the matriarch's flagship shifted its stance overhead. No longer poised to strike but waiting, its golden light pouring down through the thinning clouds like the gaze of some ancient celestial judge. And for a moment the world felt impossibly still, every raindrop hanging suspended in the air. Every breath caught in the space between what had been and what would come. The matriarch studied him with eyes that held centuries, eyes that had seen empires rise and fall, humans evolve and vanish and reappear with sparks the galaxy had tried to erase. "If you stay here," she murmured, her voice softer than the storm's dying heartbeat, "the council will come again, with more fear and fewer restraints, and each time your spark will grow until something inside you breaks." Her daughter stepped closer to him, the faint glow of her royal markings flickering like candlelight battling wind. "And if you come with us," she said, her voice trembling with emotions she no longer tried to hide, "you won't face destiny alone." He looked at her then, really looked, past the warrior armor and the royal lineage, past the duty that weighed on her shoulders, past the fear she fought to hide, and what he saw made his breath falter, because she wasn't asking him to save her world or fulfill some ancient prophecy. She was asking him to choose himself, to choose survival, to choose a path that did not end with him running from who he was becoming. Aaron swallowed tightly, the heat in his chest pulsing again, softer now, like a living heartbeat waiting for his decision. "I never wanted to be dangerous," he whispered. "I never wanted to be anything more than someone trying to live, trying to heal." The matriarch stepped closer, her presence heavy but not crushing. "Power does not choose the ready," she said. "It chooses the willing." "And if I'm not willing," he asked quietly, "if I choose to stay here among humans, to keep my life as it is?" Her expression did not harden, but it grew impossibly sad. "Then the council will descend within a cycle. The fleets will close in. The humans here will be caught between their fear and yours, and your spark will ignite without guidance, tearing through you, consuming you, and when you fall, the galaxy will lose balance." He felt the weight of it then, not as a punishment but as truth, a truth that had walked beside him silently for years, in the war, in the ruins, in the nights he survived what no one else could, in the way his heart had restarted without permission, in the way his strength rose when it should have faded. But then he felt her hand, light, trembling, slip into his, and the truth changed, softened. It became something he could face. "You're not choosing a throne," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You're choosing a path that lets you breathe without fear, a path where you learn what you are before it destroys you." He looked at her hand in his, her fingers warm despite the cold rain, glowing faintly where her markings touched his skin, and something inside him steadied, the fire in his chest aligning with her touch, finding a rhythm that was no longer chaotic, no longer frightening. He met her eyes, and the universe narrowed to a single understanding. "I go," he whispered. "But only if you walk with me." A sharp breath escaped her, part relief, part disbelief, part something deeper that tightened her grip around his fingers. "Always?" she whispered. "I walk with you always?" The matriarch watched their hands entwined, and something ancient shifted in her expression, something like acceptance blooming through the armor of her centuries. "So be it," she said, her voice carrying across the courtyard like a declaration not just of law, but of fate. Let the spark rise under royal protection. The warships above withdrew into formation, air lights softening, their engines humming in harmonious resonance rather than threat, and the retrieval squad stepped back, lowering their shields and bowing their heads as the matriarch raised her hand, calling down a soft golden platform that shimmered into existence beneath their feet. As it lifted them toward the flagship, the district below grew smaller, the stone courtyard shrinking into a memory he would carry with him forever, the place where his ordinary life ended and his destiny began. He felt her step closer beside him, their shoulders brushing, the warmth of her presence anchoring him against the rising fear of the unknown, and she whispered softly, "You survived everything alone before, but not anymore, not ever again." He turned to her, meeting her luminous eyes, and for the first time the fire inside him didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a promise, a spark meant to illuminate, not destroy. As the platform entered the open hangar of the flagship, the matriarch stepped forward and spoke with ceremonial gravity. "From this moment, the human is under my house's protection. His training begins at dawn, his destiny intertwined with the safety of the empire." But then she paused, her gaze shifting between him and her daughter, and something gentler softened her tone. "And perhaps," she added, "with the heart of the heir whose hand he holds." The princess's breath hitched, Aaron's heart surged, and as the hangar doors closed behind them, sealing them into a future neither had asked for but both chose together, Aaron felt fate settle into its rightful shape, not as a burden, not as a prophecy, but as the beginning of something vast and beautiful. He took her hand fully, weaving his fingers with hers. She leaned into him, her armor brushing his jacket. The matriarch watched with the faintest shadow of a smile, and somewhere deep within the flagship, a spark awakened, steady, bright, ready to rewrite the galaxy with a human heart that refused to break and an alien princess who refused to let him face destiny alone.